Hello, and I think at last I can actually say this and mean it. Welcome to the Dear Prudence live show. It was not so live earlier. We've been having some technical difficulties, and we appreciate your patience. Welcome to the show. I am your host, Dear Prudence, also known as Danny Lavery. This is my dreadful new mustache. And with me in the studio tonight is Crispin Long, a very patient guest. Crispin, welcome.
Why, thank you. Happy to be here.
I am thrilled that you're here, and this is just a note to our viewers. Two things. One is that you may occasionally see Crispin's face resolve into a frozen picture. That's because their connection is quite tricky, and so you might just be hearing them and not really watching them move around in space and time so much. The other is that you will get to see Bon Bon. We have seen your requests to see Bon Bon. He'll be here at the end of the show. Crispin, would you read our first letter?
I would love to. So the subject is By Any Other Name. Dear Prudence, I am non-binary and I have been out to my parents for a few years. Last summer, I told them I was getting top surgery and they did not take it well. My dad sent me a long email referring to top surgery as mutilation and the queer community as a cult. They relented once they realized my decision was final and even offered to take care of me after surgery. I politely declined. Now I'm ready to start going by a different name, but I'm afraid to tell them. They get my pronouns right a little more than half of the time, and I know this is going to hurt them a lot. I have asked them more than once to go to a PFLAG meeting or therapy or something to work through their concerns, but they haven't. How do I tell them about my new name without inviting an emotional reaction from them?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I really want to recommend. What was that?
I said I really feel for this letter writer.
I think that one gift we can offer this letter writer, which I so often am sorry to have to give, is the gift of like, oh, you're definitely not going to be able to do that. The hope of telling your parents about your new name without inviting an emotional reaction, give that one up. Set that dream on fire and push it out to sea. It will not happen. There's no way that you can frame this. It's not going to invite an emotional reaction because your parents are not being reasonable about this. Which is the bad and the good news.
Yeah, and I would also say, you say inviting an emotional reaction. I would say don't think of it as you inviting an emotional reaction. They're choosing how to react to you. That's not on you. That's on them. It's not your fault.
Yes. Yeah, and I think I would also encourage this letter writer to really reframe I know this is going to hurt them a lot. Yes. I think your parents have been pushing that for at least the last few years of the reason that we send you deeply cruel emails about how you're mutilating yourself or like ignoring your stated wishes about your pronouns is because we are so hurt. And when we are hurt, we cannot be held responsible for doing things that are mean or invasive or domineering or anything just even borderline inappropriate. So when we're hurt, we get to do whatever we want with impunity, and you get to be hurting us forever. And we are going to be as hurt about transition stuff as we were on the very first day. But we're trying, but the trying is so painful and it hurts to try. And when we try, it hurts more. So really, the more we try and the more hurt we are and the more mean we are about your transition, the nicer you should be to us, because how hurt we are is evidence of how much we're trying and it's killing us. Can't you see it's killing us? Why are you killing us? You used to be such a happy little girl.
Yeah.
Was that close, do you think?
Yeah. It's, unfortunately, transphobia is very common. People still think that it's acceptable to be transphobic. It's not uncommon for parents to react this way, but that doesn't make it any more acceptable than it is. It's not an excuse. I think you just have to do your best. Just tell them the truth. You don't know how they'll react, but I hope that you have people in your life who do affirm you and who do believe you. And I hope that you can, seek affirmation from them.
Yeah. And I think partly because you have been buying into their story that they do this and they act this way because they are so hurt, your response for the last few years has been to be relatively, it sounds like, patient, to absorb a lot of energy, like multiple page emails about how you're joining a cult, and doing a lot of like hey, 50%, not too bad, I'll take it. And I think that you need to retire that, which is not to say you need to start yelling at them or like waking them up to do like wind sprints every morning until they can get your pronouns right. But just to give them a lot less space to spew stuff at you. You've told them to go to PFLAG. You've told them to go to therapy. They know that those things exist. I think let them know in the most casual and low grade way you can. Text them, email them, make it a quick phone call, and just give it to them as an update. Don't invite an emotional conversation. So just like, by the way, I'm going by such and such a name now. Please use it. And then if they say like, what? You're a new name? Where is this coming from? We're going to have to talk about this for 9 hours. You just get to say, oh, I'm so sorry. I have to run. I got to go. Like, don't give them the opportunity to argue with you about your name. You've spent so much time accommodating them. I just want to save you time and energy and write down, they're not doing this because they're hurt. They're doing this because they want me to stop. That's why they send those emails. That's why they weep at you. That's why they're doing it. It's not because, 4 years on, they're still so devastated by the idea of a non-binary kid that they just like can never recover, like the Fisher King, maimed forever. They're doing it because it works. It makes you feel guilty and it makes you feel like you have to bend over backwards for them, and you shouldn't. And I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking about this earlier today too, because I was doing, as you may remember, that film adaptation idea for that terrible book that's like the little golden book picture of like a little toddler with like a cannonball through her middle, and it's like the transgender craze is seducing our daughters, and I, for some reason, felt like, oh, they should make this movie into Father of the Bride. And I just keep picturing Steve Martin be like, Mackenzie, what kind of a name is Mackenzie? And then getting mad because he has to pay like $50,000 for top of the line top surgery. Nobody steal that movie idea. It's mine.
Yeah, he's going to make it.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to read our next letter and then I will let you start answering because I just had a lot to say on that one. The subject here is below the radar work battle. Dear Prudence, I'm in a female-dominated creative field, and I'm having trouble with one particular coworker. She exhibits classic narcissistic traits, but I didn't realize that at first, and apparently didn't act deferentially enough towards her when I was hired. Since then, she has had it out for me in both overt and covert ways, publicly baiting me, making unwanted comparisons, and wielding humor to hide the fact that she's a bully. Other people notice but won't speak up because she is successful and knows what she can get away with. Leaving the organization is not an option because the professional development opportunities outweigh the angst and drama. Grey Rock isn't an option either because of the small community. I've started enforcing boundaries and pushing back. However, I'm pretty sure I look like an asshole because my firm, straightforward statements don't mesh with the unofficial culture of niceness. It doesn't help that I'm younger either. I'm not a good liar, so I can't distract her with false compliments or fake niceness. I know this has affected how other people in the organization relate to me. I suppose that should be freeing in itself. If they're going to believe the worst about me or let the dynamic continue, then I shouldn't care what they think and so on. But the situation still weighs on me. Are there other strategies I should be considering?
This sounds incredibly frustrating. It sounds like she's bullying you in such a way that she can kind of maintain a certain amount of plausible deniability, which is like the most frustrating way to be bullied sometimes because it's hard to put an exact, finger on it, or for people to clearly call out something that's definitely not okay. That being said, it does sound like there are clearly things happening that aren't okay that other people are aware of. And as far as strategies go, I guess my question would be like, is there anyone you're close to at the office who might be able to back you up somehow? Because it sounds like that's all on you and no one's really defending you because they don't want to get into it with this person. But I wonder if someone could help you out with that so it's not just you alone having to deal with it.
Yeah, I went a little bit back and forth when I was reading this as to, I wished that the letter writer had given us a little bit more detail because I they don't say like that it's been affecting their work or the kind of projects they're working on. I don't know what being publicly baited looks like in this situation. I don't know what the unwanted are these unwanted comparisons like personal? Are they about your appearance? Is she comparing your project to another project that you don't like? Like it's very hard for me to get a sense of what the scale is here. And I think usually when I hear from somebody who has a really difficult coworker, they give an example or two such that I really know how serious it is. So I just feel a little bit of a sense of, I wish I knew more, because I might say some of this, I think you should let go, or holy shit, that's awful, go in the other direction. Which is not to say she sounds difficult. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I also noticed too, like, there is like you're sort of diagnosing her with narcissism, which I think diagnosing someone with a specific, condition is not super useful in situations like this. Only a medical professional can do that. Like, you don't know.
And it does always get my back up a little bit. Like, you can't just say she's an asshole. Like, why is that not good enough?
Yeah, like, just actually what is the behavior, like in a concrete way. Like, it doesn't matter, what the diagnosis is. Yeah, I don't know. I wonder, sometimes people like this, you just kind of have to ignore too. You just don't really engage with them.
Yeah.
Kind of don't feed the beast, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know, Crispin, if you are familiar with the expression that the letter writer used, which was gray rock.
Oh yeah, I picked that up.
Yeah. And so I'm glad that you mentioned not feeding the beast, because I found it strange that the letter writer said, I don't have the ability to be neutral with her because of the small community.
Yeah.
I can't really see a situation wherein the size of the company would make it impossible for you to not take her bait. And that's where I think what I put together with that is, I'm younger than her. She didn't feel that I acted deferentially enough towards me, and it's affecting how other people in the organization relate to me. So one, again, without making any judgments about the kind of provocation that this woman is sending your way, one possible read of this is that you are being too rude to a senior member of your organization, and other people are beginning to think of you as somebody who like yells at a superior or is like overstepping their boundaries or going beyond their own job description, and that would potentially outweigh the professional development opportunities that you see at this company. So I also want to caution you, if you see this affecting you, there's always that tension between, you don't want to go along just to get along, and if the culture is like everyone smiles and is fake nice, I do want you to feel some freedom not to engage with that. But if this gets in the way of your ability to pursue these professional advancements, then at that point, it might actually be worth saying, if I can't see myself going along to get along even a little bit here, maybe I'm not going to get those opportunities, and maybe I need to look for a different company. So with all that, yeah, I think maybe check in with your boss. And again, don't check in with your boss and say like, hey, we all know that Linda's a narcissist and everyone pretends to be nice to her. Help me get her off my back. So much as like, I've noticed that there's some conflict between her and me, and I wanted to know if you had any thoughts about ways that I could smooth things over, and see what your boss has to say. The risk there is if your boss is like, yeah, you need to, go apologize to her in her office and lick her boots and, say she's the best thing in the world, then you've just asked your boss to give you an assignment you don't want to complete. But I think that's my best advice. And then just, I think you can gray rock it, which is not the same as ignoring someone. It just means saying like, okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean you have to distract her with false compliments. The kind of lying that we're talking about is just like, I'm not going to give you a window into how I'm feeling about this at the time. You don't have access to my internal world, and I want to spend as little time dealing with you today as possible.
Yeah, you won't win. Sounds like you're not going to persuade her to start liking you. I think it would make you suffer to try. I think just kind of, just that way.
Yeah. That's all I got. Would you read the next letter?
Yes. Let's see. So the next letter, the subject is, it's just hair. Dear Prudence, 10 years ago, my husband's first wife died of breast cancer. It's still very difficult for him to deal with, although he refuses to go to grief counseling. I've always wanted to buzz my hair, and now that I'm almost 50, I've decided I want to do it. My husband begged me not to because it reminded him of his first wife going through multiple rounds of chemotherapy. We're at an impasse. I'm leaning towards not shaving it, but my friends say he's being ridiculous. I don't want to traumatize him. Who's right? First of all, no one is right. The open question, this is not correct or incorrect. This is you are allowed to do what you want with your body, and your partner cannot dictate the choices you make about your own body.
Yes, and I will also add, I really, really get that you love your husband. It doesn't sound like you feel like he is overstating his trauma in order to get you to do something he actually just doesn't like aesthetically, and that you understand that he's truly feeling what he says that he's feeling. And I also always think it's good to step back and say, if you don't feel like this is something that's representative of a dynamic in your marriage, it's okay to say it's just hair, as you already say. So if part of you feels like, I always kind of wanted to do this, I could push for it, I've decided not to, I'm okay with that, I think that's fine. And if your friends say this is awful, I get it. I also just, I don't want to make this into the defining issue of bodily autonomy, even though, Crispin, I think I am inclined to agree with you that he should be looking for other and better ways to support his grief.
I do sympathize with, his grief. And it does sound like it's very real. And but yeah, it sounds like it is something he could work on actively a bit more to try to overcome. And maybe this is pointing to just the deeper issue of his own handling of his grief, which of course, you seem compassionate about, as you should be. So yeah, also if you feel like you're shaving your head just because your friends are persuading you that it's silly, don't do it because of what
right,
your
or
friends
it's
say.
the principle of the thing, so I have to shave my head now to prove to my friends that I'm independent. That's
your
not
friends
something that I want to encourage.
If you don't want to, that is also up to you.
Yeah, I think really the key thing here is to say, let's put this to the side for a minute. We're not talking about my hair right now. I want to revisit the topic of some counseling, maybe even just together, if the idea of going by yourself feels overwhelming. If only because I want to find ways to talk about your grief and trauma that don't just involve okay, we're not going to do this and we're not going to talk about it. I want to be able to sometimes talk about these things, even if we decide together that I'm not going to do something. I want to know that we are seeing a counselor who can help us deal with really big things. And I understand that part of his fear is probably, this was such a big, awful, traumatic loss. The idea of going and setting aside time to talk about it will make all those bad feelings worse, which I'm just barely keeping at bay. And I get that that's often a real barrier to starting therapy, but it's not the case that talking about it is going to make everything instantly 10 times worse. And so I think that would be the thing I would really push for here. And then beyond that, to say either I'm not going to do it right now, but let's revisit it after a few weeks of therapy, or, I am going to do it. It's important to me. I'm not going to do it my whole life. I'm not always going to be bald. I'm here to talk to you about it before and after, but I'm letting you know lovingly that I'm going to do it, and not hey, fuck you, or, oh gosh, you are upset, so I can't do it. Figuring out, I think, how to lovingly affirm that someone's pain is real and important and matters to you, and that you're not just dismissing it, but then to also say, but I'm also not going to be able to give you the thing that you want. And so I want to talk about what it's going to look like to go through something challenging together, because it's also true that a shaved head looks very, very different from somebody who is going through chemo.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't even thought about that. Like, it might not even actually read the same way in reality.
Yeah, I think some of that is just the fear of like my bald wife that will remind me, but having seen both kinds of shaved heads, there's many, many differences, and I think that will maybe provide some relief. So I guess in sum, don't just do it because your friends are telling you to. Don't do anything without talking it through first. Maybe prioritize the therapy over the haircut. Either way, you're going to be okay. And it's not like the difference between being like a free and independent individual versus somebody who cares about their husband's sadness. Like, you can do both those things. Now we get to actually go into a sort of different version of that exact same problem, but on a really, really different scale. That sort of question of like, what does it mean to support my partner through grief or depression or trauma, when it starts to cross lines of my own desires, preferences, happiness, safety, etc. So we're just taking that problem and like trading up.
Yeah.
Is it my turn to read? I think it's my turn to read.
Yeah.
I love this frozen picture of you so much, because you just look so helpful and expectant, and I just feel like I should be handing you like a mug of elf tea or something, just like, hello traveler. Yeah. Yes,
I'm glad I succeeded. That's what I was going. Just so everyone knows, I just took this picture. It's a very up-to-date picture. It's what I sort of like in my little room now.
It's a great little room. You look very fresh-faced, and it really drives home, I think, the scuzziness of my mustache. So actually, I feel like I should be handing you like poison tea. Nice.
Masculinity has a wide range, doesn't it?
I don't want to poison you, Crispin. I like you. I enjoy our camaraderie, and I hope you live a long, long time.
So do I.
The subject of this next letter is supporting a partner without sacrificing my own health. Dear Prudence, my girlfriend and I have been together for 2 years and living together for several months. She's a wonderful person, but we both suspected for a long time that she suffers from depression. I've always known her to be moody, and typically she gets down for several days before bouncing back. After a recent episode where she felt suicidal, I finally talked her into starting therapy, and she's been going off and on for a few months now. She says she doesn't feel like her therapist really gets her, and thinks he's reluctant to explore root issues, focusing on superficial solutions. She says it's good, but also that she doesn't think it has any real benefit and often ignores his suggestions, like keeping a mood journal. She says she doesn't know where to start when it comes to finding a new therapist, and I've compiled a list of alternatives, but we decided that she should make the calls. What else can I do? I've tried empathetic listening, giving solicited feedback and advice, occasionally giving unsolicited advice, encouraging her to contact her friends, most of whom are out of state now. But she says she hates texting and generally seems uninterested in sticking to any strategy, which I realize is itself a symptom of depression. During her depressive episodes, my girlfriend frequently used to lash out at me, although that lessened with time after I set some boundaries. But I find myself exhausted and running out of empathy. Every time she has another episode, I find myself sighing internally. She says she's tired of living this way, but also that she doesn't believe she's capable of being truly happy. And I feel increasingly resentful. Now I'm starting to doubt that I can be really happy in this relationship if this never changes. Am I being selfish? Is there a way I can help to guide the woman I love towards better mental health? I know depression can be very circular, but I'm also tired of replaying the same scenes over and over. I really felt for this one.
Yeah. This is tough.
It is tough. And it is, I think, a reminder that for all that I often advise people, like, start seeing a therapist, that this is often what it starts to look like, which is a combination of, well, this therapist is sort of weird, and I don't know how I feel about these suggestions, and I'm not really sure where this is going to go. And it's not just like, oh, now I have my therapist, and now my depression is treated, and now I am managing my mental health, and now I start every day with a glass of hot lemon water, and then I just achieve.
Yeah, that's all it takes. Just tick things off a list. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, for one thing, maybe this therapist is not the best fit. it sounds like you're aware of that. Some kind of shopping around needs to happen. I think what stuck out to me was that it was you persuading her to go to therapy rather than her kind of initiating that within herself and making her own decision to go to therapy. I think, that suggests that there's maybe kind of like a longer way to go than you would want, because it does, it's very tough to treat depression and mental illness. It's, I'm very sympathetic to the fact that it's changes that happen really slowly and incrementally. And, depression can be, like you said, you get caught in a loop. The things that you're supposed to do to treat it are things that depression prevents you from doing. But ultimately it's, you can't fix this for her. It is very much in her hands.
Yeah. I think the thing that concerned me the most was she used to lash out at me a lot during these depressive episodes.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that that's happening less often, but that is my, I think, biggest question. And so I hope if the letter writer is listening, I don't know what that lashing out looks like, but I would encourage you to take stock of that separately from her mental health, and maybe to check in with a trusted friend or two, somebody whose judgment you trust, somebody who you don't worry is going to start gossiping or spreading it around, but to just kind of get feedback of, have you ever had a partner treat you this way? Does this sound, not like normal, but maybe like within the realm of like, oh yeah, she needs help, but you two can work with this? Or does this sound like concerning, potentially cruel, or controlling or manipulative? Yeah, I would say seek out detail and seek out feedback on the history of lashing out, and make sure that you are not keeping that a secret to protect her. Again, I get that you care about her. You don't want to just run around telling all your friends everything that she's ever done or said when she's depressed. But mostly, I think when I get this kind of question, the thing that I always want to stress is you can love and care for your partner. You can encourage them to get help for depression, and also take into account that depressed people don't always just like do the best things for themselves. And sometimes they're just like, it's hard to do something. It's hard to feel motivation. It's hard to feel like things matter because you are depressed. And it is also really, really crucial to say there's certain ways that I need to know that I am safe and respected and cared for. And if my partner can't do that with me and for me, regardless of whether or not they're depressed, regardless of whether or not they're struggling, I have the right to end that relationship.
Yeah, like you're worried that you're being selfish. It does not sound like you're being selfish at all. I think, it's clear that you're very caring, and that you've tried to help her and continue to do so. And, and she deserves that help, but that doesn't mean that you are required to stay with her. You can leave any relationship for any reason. If it's not making you happy, especially in the long term.
Yeah. And especially if you are starting to feel like I'm doing more of the work of finding a new therapist than she is. I was once in a relationship where the other party and I both agreed that therapy for them was a really good idea. And we kept agreeing that it would be a really good idea. And eventually I was like, okay, I've researched every therapist in like a 30-mile radius who focuses on your specific issues and who has sliding scale stuff. And I called all of them, and they take your insurance, and here's how much it would cost per session. Like, I can kick in a certain amount to help cover it. And wouldn't you know it, my like busting my hump trying to make it happen did not actually move the needle. And despite my coming up with like a beautiful like leather bound notebook of all the therapists who could help them with the things that they said that they felt like were problems, all that ended up happening is that after we broke up, I had a great list of therapists I could call for me.
That sounds
I don't think they ever went to therapy.
Yeah, I'm I hope that you benefited from that afterwards.
I did. I started seeing a therapist, and within like 2 minutes, I was like, I think I'd like to be a boy. So I got a lot of mileage out of that. But yeah, I think having patience for the ways in which depression makes it difficult to motivate yourself. Possibly talk to your girlfriend about whether or not she has discussed with her therapist either getting a psych referral or speaking to her doctor about medication. I think especially if she's gotten some suicidal ideation and it seems like there may be a real brain chemistry component to this, in addition to talk therapy, if she has not tried antidepressants, she should talk about them with her doctor, talk about the pros and cons, talk about the risks and advantages. They can really make room for you to do the kind of work in therapy that is hard to do without that help.
Yeah, a combination of those things can be very helpful.
Yeah. And then really just look for, what are you doing for you? Like, what are you doing so that your life is not devoted to 24/7 managing her depression? And that doesn't mean just like suddenly cutting her off in the middle of a conversation and saying like, fuck you, I'm at my empathy limit, I'm leaving. But really making it clear that you love her and you want to support her, and you're also not going to be able to do it all day, every day. And who are you talking to? Who are you sharing this with? Who are you getting support with? And if things do not change, if you share that with her, and if you start to feel like, I don't think I can keep dating her, then you can break up with her. You are allowed to do that. It does not confine her to a lifetime of untreated grief. It doesn't mean she can't look after herself and get help if she needs it. It doesn't mean she's a bad person. It just means you didn't date her forever.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so glad you get to read this next letter because it's so good and it's so much fun and it's so very long.
This letter, I mean, after I read it, I felt like I had read an entire novel.
Great novel.
Yeah.
A novel I hope Brandon Taylor writes.
Literally, yes. I just read Real Life. Please let him read this letter and expand on it. I would love that.
Okay, good.
Okay, let's get in. Let's get into this. Subject, threesome hangover. Dear Prudence, 3 years ago, my partner of 20 years, we're gay, had a client he thought that I would enjoy getting to know. This was unusual since we'd always had pretty strong boundaries between his professional and personal life. What I didn't know was that my partner had developed an intense crush on this man, and this was the first step in what turned out to be a pretty intense campaign lobbying for us to become a throuple. Life was very chaotic at the time. My partner and I had just moved to look after his ailing parents. This man was much younger than us and had only come out earlier that year. I wasn't against the idea wholesale, but it seemed like a bad time, and I avoided spending time together as a trio. But I eventually met him after a lot of encouragement from my partner. He turned out to be an interesting and attractive guy, but I still wasn't interested. My partner persisted, we went out together a few times, and I eventually found myself more interested in this new guy and this new arrangement. So we went for it. It was thrilling and awkward and complicated. After 6 weeks, the new guy decided that he was no longer interested in my partner. He was, however, interested in continuing to date me. I had feelings for him too. And the next few months were painful because my partner took this rejection quite hard and moved back to California, leaving me with a lease in the Midwest for another 10 months. I've spent these past 3 years split between 2 men in 2 states. I love my partner very much. He loves me too, and sends me emotional songs with heartbreaking lyrics every week, and very much regrets what he has unleashed. Our relationship is not what it was, but I can't imagine life without him. I love the young man as well. He and I have bonded despite the unorthodox constraints placed upon us. He talks about marriage and getting a home together. I spend more time with him than my partner, but I am exhausted. I understand that I am not doing any favors to either of these two. The young man deserves a more stable entree into serious relationships, at least a companion who can commit to him fully. My partner, meanwhile, deserves to know whether our relationship is surviving, for better and worse, but I haven't gotten an answer from him. But I haven't got an answer for him. I just can't choose. I don't want to hurt either of them. I am avoiding the pain involved in leaving one of them. Various other complicating factors, such as the location of my house, California, and where I would like to be more productive, the Midwest, have begun tying me to both cities and adding new layers of complication. Basically, I need an approach to decision making that I don't have in this case, something more than just a pro-con list, something true to the feelings I've lost touch with. Oh God. I don't know where to start.
I don't know that I'm gonna have any advice other than like kind of working. I mean, it's not at all, but it's also kind of working. And maybe just see how long you can keep things going until one of them dumps you. Like, that's definitely a thing, you know, like hoping your partner breaks up with you and then just like kind of pushing boundaries until they do. It's not great and people usually get mad, but at least then you don't have to make a decision.
I mean, my sense is he should pick, or at least wants to. I am not confident, though, that like if he chose one person or the other, that afterwards that relationship would be like good, solid, and healed. I have trouble. So it's hard to know how to go forward here.
Yeah, I mean, especially with your original partner, the whole like we were like pretty committed to one another for a really long time, and then we went through this really difficult time where we were caring for his parents, and then he was like, "Hey, I found us a twink," and then the twink loved me and not him, and now we like see each other a couple of months a year, and he sends me sad breakup songs all the time. Like you're kind of just like existing in a state of constantly breaking up with him or something. Like he's just always like, God, I'm so sad we're not really together anymore. And that's the state of your relationship. And I'm not really sure how you come back from that to, yeah, as you were saying, Crispin, like we're together, we love it, we're having a great time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I sort of have different concerns about like both relationships on either side, you know, like it's concerning the way that he initiated the sort of throuple situation sounded a little bit coercive. Like you kept saying that you weren't interested and he kept pushing it. That makes me concerned, you know, about the dynamic there. And then the other one.
I mean, it's shitty, but I'm not exactly concerned about the letter writer's ability to like look after himself. You know what I mean? Like, because eventually he was just like, yeah, all right, I'll have him. You move out of here. Like, now he's got it all. Like, he's definitely not currently spoiled for choice.
Yeah. I mean, my concern about the other relationship, I guess, is like you keep calling him the young man.
Yeah.
Or I just thought that was odd.
It's like a Patricia Highsmith novel.
Yes. Like the young man deserves a more stable entree into serious relationships. Like, why don't he that's up to him, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the one question I have there was like he talks about marriage and getting a home together. And then you just say, I spend more time with him than my partner. So I mean, reading between the lines, my guess is that you don't want to marry him and you don't want to get a home together, but that's not a slam dunk. So I think really the only thing you have to do right now is be honest with your young man. And if what that means is saying, I have no interest in getting married or a home together, what we have is great, but I'm never going to be more available and I'm never going to want to be monogamous with you. And I definitely don't want to get married. Tell him that, and maybe he'll say, that's very disappointing, I'm very unhappy, and you two can keep dating for another 6 years and he can send you sad songs. Maybe he'll break up with you on the spot and then at least something will have changed. That's nice. Or maybe he'll say, okay, I'm going to look for more serious relationships with other people, but in the meantime, I really like what we have, and you can do that. But really, I think that's all you have to do in case you haven't already. If you've been like, when he sends you Zillow links, stop saying,
Yeah. There's clearly a disparity in your desires for commitment. You seem to be aware of that. You should be aware of that as well.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that bit about like, oh, I don't want to hurt either one of them. And it's just like, come on, man. Your partner of 20 years is sending you like Lana Del Rey songs every week. This guy is miserable. And he is miserable because he introduced you to a guy he thought he was going to get to have on the side. And then that guy picked you. And then you sent your husband to move away. Like,
Yeah,
you hurt him so much. And I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve it. He kind of did. And I kind of love it. But like, you've hurt him a ton. You should give yourself so much permission to hurt him a little bit by breaking up if that's what you want. Because like, that's a scratch compared to what you've already done to this guy.
Yes. Yeah.
Send me some more sad songs next week, babe. I'll make some time in between, my jogs on the beach with my young gentleman caller.
Yeah. I mean, there's already just pain everywhere in this situation. Breaking up with someone is a different kind of pain, I guess, but everyone's kind of suffering. Do you want to change the form of the suffering, I guess is the question.
Yeah, you know the limits of your suffering right now, and as long as you find that bearable, you'll probably keep doing this, and maybe one or both of them will dump you, and then you'll have neither, and you'll have to start over. And don't worry so much about the location of your house or what region of the country you think you'd be more productive in. You can live in the Midwest and be productive if you want, and also dump the guy in the Midwest. Like, just because you're living in the same tri-state area does not mean like, well, obviously we have to stay together.
Yeah, houses can be sold, and you can decide where you would like to live based on your career. Those are kind of separate concerns, really. If you feel to pursue those, sure. It doesn't sound like that's in the forefront of your mind, though.
I don't think I'm ever quite going to get over, like, honey, I've brought someone home. I think we should all date. And like, I don't know. Well, just give it a try. And they're finally like, all right, I'll give it a try. And then they leave you for each other, but keep you around just enough that you're always like,
oh, yeah. I mean, that just backfired in the absolute worst possible way.
Very, very funny. It's sad, but it's very, very funny.
Yeah, I mean, it's all fascinating. I wish I could just observe. I wish I could watch the reality show. I want to know more.
Yeah, I want to read the Patricia Highsmith novel or the Brandon Taylor novel. Like, that's what I want. And yes. That's it. That's our last question, which means that you're going to have to entertain our guests for a minute while I go and get Bon Bon, because they promised him to the people, and the people have spoken.
Oh my. I can, yeah, let's see. Bon Bon, you're really in for a treat. I'm sure you've seen pictures, but a moving Bon Bon is even more thrilling.
Oh yeah, you got to see him last night. You got to see him move all over the place.
He was bouncing around, testing his softness. He's an incredibly soft dog, softer even than he looks. Very soft.
Yeah, he really is quite soft, and right now he's a little bit uninterested in being held for the camera, which is understandable, because why would he enjoy having bright lights shown in his face? But here he is. Here's the young man. Shortly he's going to be given a little walk around the neighborhood, and he's my young gentleman.
Yes.
Well, I hope that you all enjoyed this. He's licking my forearm, and as cute as he is, I think that's really uncomfortable and gross. So with that, Crispin, I'm going to thank you so much for your time and attention this evening. And let's get Brandon to write that novel.
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. That's all the advice we have for you today. Go home or stay home. Get out of here.